What's the most beautiful naturist beach in Italy? It sounds like a simple question. Sardinia, with its almost unreal sea? Tuscany? Or one of those places that might never win a photography contest but has written an important chapter in the history of Italian naturism? The more I searched for an answer, the more I realized I was asking the wrong question. Because choosing the most beautiful beach is one thing. Choosing the best naturist beach is another. And the two don't necessarily coincide. So I decided to narrow the choice down to three very different locations. Piscinas in Sardinia, Lido di Dante in Emilia-Romagna, and Nido dell'Aquila in Tuscany. Three beaches, three completely different ways to experience the sea. But in the end, I'll choose only one. And I'm pretty sure some of you won't agree with me at all. And that's the beauty of it. Let's start with the place that probably has the easiest task if we judge with our eyes alone, Sardinia. And specifically Piscinas on the Costa Verde. There are beaches that look beautiful in photographs, and then there are places that, when you see them, seem almost too big to fit into a photo. Piscinas belongs to the second category. The first thing that strikes you here is the space, the vast sand dunes, the vegetation, the open sea, and that feeling of arriving at a stretch of coastline where nature still has something to say. In many Italian seaside resorts, we've become used to seeking out our own little spot. A beach umbrella, two loungers, a few feet of sand. Here the feeling is completely different. It's the person who becomes small. And this is probably what makes Piscinas so fascinating, even for those looking for a naturist experience. Space creates distance. Distance creates tranquility. And tranquility can become freedom. You don't necessarily need dozens of people around you sharing the same choice. Sometimes it's enough just to know you can find your own space without constantly feeling like the center of attention. If I had to pick a winner solely based on the landscape, I'd already have a problem. Because it would be very hard to knock Piscinas off the top spot. But we aren't just looking for a beautiful beach. We're looking for something more. A place where naturism isn't just possible, but where it has an identity. So we have to leave Sardinia and ideally cross over Italy. Let's go to the Romagna coast, to Lido di Dante. If you arrive expecting the massive dunes of the Costa Verde and that impression of almost untouched nature, you're probably making the wrong comparison. Lido di Dante doesn't need to beat Piscinas when it comes to being spectacular. Its strength is something else. Here, an important word comes into play: history. Because there are places where some people practice naturism, and then there are places that, over time, have become part of a country's naturist culture. Lido di Dante belongs to this second category. And you can't measure this difference just by looking at the color of the water. You feel it in the atmosphere, in the people, in the normality with which men and women of different ages can share the same space without the body becoming the focus of the experience. And it's a curious thing. Before discovering naturism, many people imagine a naturist beach as a place where everyone stares at everyone else. But when the environment really works, the exact opposite happens. After a while, you don't even notice it. Someone is reading, someone is walking, someone is talking to a friend, someone is going for a swim, just like on any other beach. And perhaps this very normality is one of the hardest things to explain to someone who has never experienced a naturist environment. From this perspective, Lido di Dante offers something Piscinas can't in the same way: a collective memory, a community, a piece of Italian naturist history. At this point, the comparison gets much harder. Piscinas gives me nature, Lido di Dante gives me history and community. To find it, we have to head back to the Tyrrhenian coast, Tuscany, the Gulf of Barati, Nido dell'Aquila. This, in my opinion, is where the real final begins, because Nido dell'Aquila manages to bring together qualities we found separately in the first two candidates. On one hand, there's the landscape. We're in one of the most beautiful coastal areas of Tuscany. The sea, the Mediterranean scrub, the light, and the curve of the coast immediately create that atmosphere we look for when we imagine a day away from the noise. But there's also something else. There's a recognizable naturist identity, and it's this combination that makes it particularly interesting. Because the ideal naturist beach, at least for me, shouldn't force you to choose. You shouldn't have to decide between a gorgeous beach where naturism feels like an exception and a place with a strong naturist tradition where the landscape takes a backseat. The ideal would be to have both nature and belonging, beauty and normality, space and community. And this is where Nido dell'Aquila begins to gain points. But there's one criterion we haven't considered yet, perhaps the most important one. Imagine someone who has never tried naturism. They're 50 or 60, maybe 70. Their body isn't what it was when they were 25. They've got a few extra pounds, a few scars, wrinkles, and above all, they've spent a lifetime learning that your body should only be shown when it meets certain standards. That person asks you, I'd like to try, but where should I go? At that point, I wouldn't necessarily recommend the beach with the most beautiful water. I'd look for a place where something much more important could happen. After a while, you forget you're on a naturist beach. Because in my opinion, that's the moment you really understand something. At first, you think about the body, your own, that of others, where to put your towel, who might be watching you, how to behave. Then some time passes, and you begin to sense the sea, the wind, the sand, the conversations, laughter a few yards away, and suddenly you discover that the problem you brought with you had remained almost entirely in your head. And that's why, if someone asked me today to name just one Italian naturist beach, my choice would be Nido dell'Aquila. I'm not saying it's objectively the most beautiful in Italy. Such a ranking would be impossible. And many of you have probably already started to protest. Some would choose Sardinia, someone else Lido di Dante, someone else a beach. I haven't even included among these three. But if I have to weigh the beauty of the location, naturist tradition, atmosphere, and the chance to experience naturism as something normal, Nido dell'Aquila for me represents one of the most interesting balances to be found in Italy. Yet, while I was preparing this comparison, I realized something. Maybe I've been asking the wrong question from the start. I asked, what is the most beautiful naturist beach in Italy? But maybe we should ask ourselves, what is the most beautiful naturist beach for me? Because it might not be the one with the clearest water, it might not have spectacular dunes, it might not appear in any rankings. It could simply be the place where you arrived one morning with 1,000 fears and from which you went home a little different. The place where you realized that no one was judging you. Where you stopped, maybe just for a few hours, comparing your body to others. Where you met someone. Where you laughed. where you return the following summer. At that point, that beach is no longer just a stretch of coast. It becomes a memory. And against memories, no ranking can win. So now it's your turn. But this time, I'm asking you to make a difficult choice. Just one. If you could recommend just one Italian naturist beach to someone who really wants to get to know this world, which one would you choose? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious to see if Nido dell'Aquila will win, or if you'll be the ones to change my mind. And maybe the beach that gets the most votes will feature in one of my next videos. Because Dalla Pelle alla Mente will continue to explore naturist places. But above all, what these places can teach us when we stop looking only at the skin and start seeing the person.